Hello, those who are watching this. Happy Tuesday. Can't believe it's Tuesday already. I wanted to do a quick live video just to say what my plans are, because I would like to see if I can grow this channel, do something with it, explore options for doing live interviews, Q&As, that kind of thing. Went to the Public Collaboration Conference at the weekend. Really enjoyed it. Saw a lot of people that I've become familiar with over the years, over many years. I remember going to the first PHC conference, I think it was 2016 in Birmingham, and it wasn't that many people. So in relative terms, it was a movement that was going to snowball into something much larger from fairly humble beginnings. And over that period of time to now, there have been a lot of little wins that have then escalated to permeating into the mainstream more, and to the point where we can have a real impact. And I suppose I want to be part of that impact in a bigger way. I was really encouraged when I was asked to speak about my story and cancer in general over the past, well, that was a couple of years ago now. And that was the first time that PHC had covered cancer. And I feel that that's going to snowball and gain further momentum to be in a way that we saw on Sunday, where a whole day was dedicated to talking about cancer, or at least the morning session, and then it spilled over into more direct conversations following the event, to such an extent that I've received an avalanche of messages from people, which is a lovely thing, but it really brings home the fact that cancer is affecting so many individuals, and so many people in the audience were either affected directly themselves, or someone they knew had mostly brain tumors, but different cancers. But it's quite alarming to me that the incidence of brain tumors has exponentially risen over the past 10 or so years. So even preceding the COVID event, whatever you think of that, and the interventions that were then, thinking of the right word to use, probably use the wrong words anyway, as we're on YouTube, to talk about this this phenomena, let's say, that happened. So yeah, I just wanted to ask my audience, however small, I'm sure people may watch this video later on, what you would like to see from this channel. I'm going to be restarting my podcast. I've got some interesting individuals that I would like to interview, people who are doing new things. I like to interview people who either have a different way of doing things, different way of thinking, predominantly ideas that we haven't heard before, and from people we haven't heard before, some of which you will have heard before, but I want to try and bring these voices folded into a larger audience in some way. And following this PHC conference, I will be attending a brain tumor conference, also in London, which is quite handy. So not too difficult for me to get there. And that's, as I say, it's in a couple of weeks' time. and this is a more mainstream cancer conference. So it'll be dominated by big pharmaceutical companies and industry and health professionals, government bodies in some representative form. And so I don't get the same kind of reception that I do at PHC, but I'm inching my way closer and closer to having more of an impact there. And my longer term goal is to present my research at these conferences, which I attend every year. I have to keep on top of the advances or lack of in brain tumor research, and to just keep one foot in that trench so that I can eventually pull the other foot in and have more of a presence rather than just an onlooker, a spectator. I don't want to be a spectator anymore. I want to be someone who's involved as an agitator, as a disruptor. I think with any real advances, if you look in history, the long history that we have in this country and beyond, is that it's the agitators, the disruptors, who've invoked this kind of change that has a real translational impact to the people. And so that's what I would like to foster and encourage others to be part of, to bring people with me who are on this side, which is the more alternative conferences, which is very nice. You're in your little echo chamber, but everyone's agreeing with you. Occasionally we take small numbers with us, but I want to be part of this, part of both sides of that, and take people with me from each side. So that's the goal. We're on our way to doing that. The cancer trial is getting some momentum, which is really good, really positive. And the reception that the speakers on Sunday received was greatly encouraging, because some of my own research was presented by Dr. Isabella Cooper, who now is a doctor, and she's done incredible work to advance our understanding of ketogenic metabolic therapy and the applications of that, producing a real framework that we can apply and transpose onto other trials all over the world. And my aim is to refine that even more and to share our results, our evidence, strengths, challenges, and more about the protocol and refining it, what you'd need to look out for. And we've decided to have this be for more cancer in general, so not just a brain tumor, trial, but that is a strong, that will have a strong presence within the trial, because we're working with Kevin O'Neill, who's a neurosurgeon, who's going to help us by referring patients. I don't want to say too much, because that's giving the game away, and you can't really do that, because not everyone operates within the same in the same way that others might, in terms of their intentions and their moral compass. So you always have to be a little guarded in regards to that. Unfortunately, it's the world we live in, and academia is, well, I won't say too much, but it's not without its problems and its conflicts and its contradictions, let's say. people don't always operate within the best with the best intentions. It's not competitive. We should work together, and that's why I like the PHC. People aren't competing for the spotlight and for funding and for all these things. We do want to get funding, but we're more conciliatory, it's more of a friendly kind of environment for that. It's not this. It's not. Doesn't feel hostile. I don't feel that kind of tension in the air that sometimes I feel with the more mainstream, let's say, conferences, cancer conferences. It's less bureaucratic and less. It feels more of a family, less of a group of individuals and silos, if that makes any sense. And so, yeah, when I look at the landscape of even just academia, I'm attempting to instigate some form of change within that, as well as and how we conduct research, how we talk to each other, how we use language, how we get people involved who have more direct experiences, more first-hand experiences, like myself, people who have had or are living with a diagnosis of a brain tumor themselves have unique perspectives. And I want to bring that more into my research, which I have done over the years, but in more of a form that I can have dialogue with those people who are directly involved with patients. And that's what I've done on a smaller scale, but I'd like to do larger. Being a part of patient advisory boards and that kind of thing. And so one of the things for this channel that I have had discussions with Dr. Isabella Cooper is having a weekly Q&A, akin to the type that Richard Smith and Stephen, don't know why I forgot his surname. Saw him on Sunday. The UK Carnivore. That's his surname now. So Stephen Weston, is it? Yeah. I'll have to check that. But yeah, I'd like to. Stephen Thomas. Yeah, don't know why I thought Stephen Thomas. Yeah, I'd like to do something similar to that, but with Isabella, and maybe even we can have some collaboration, because I think that the work that they've done is inspirational and has provoked me to want to do something similar. I think there's real possibility, real scope for those possibilities that I'm not making the most of. Also, just to attempt to gain more funding, because my work is all self-funded, and even to cover the cost of having the lab and the equipment is quite extensive. And so any additional funds that can be procured would be desirable. And so that's one of my goals, one of my aims. The other is that I need to answer an avalanche of questions that I receive on a daily basis. And so if we have something like a regular Q&A, it provides a platform by which people can be directed to that information in a form that has this kind of consistent that consistent dialogue that where we can have more, it's more back and forth communication. And I feel that that could be incredibly valuable and can cut down on a lot of time that I spend answering questions. The only challenge that I can foresee is that I am not experienced with doing these things. I don't understand if it's even possible with the number of subscribers that I have, or the amount of times I upload these kinds of things, because I know your ability to do these things is restricted by YouTube, by those metrics. And so I need to look into that. Yeah, that would be really helpful, Jonathan, if you... I know you're a lot more experienced with this, but yeah, I feel like I don't make the most of the resources available to me. Primarily because I always had the I naturally have a proclivity to want to be out of the spotlight and to not have myself have all the attention. So it's always been a bit of a contradiction that I've had to thrust myself into the spotlight reluctantly. And I just feel like you can only get so far doing that, and I need to push myself out there more, even if I realize that doing that you're always going to get some attention that you don't like, and criticism or negativity. But the overall benefit is too good to ignore. And so I feel as though it's time to make the most of that. I just need people's help in doing that, because I feel as though these types of projects, let's call it a project, these types of projects, these endeavors are only really successful if you develop a community. So I would like to develop our own community, and I also feel as though over the years I'm more resilient and I'm able to cope with detractors, people who maybe are just watching my content to kind of stick their hand in the bee's nest to provoke the hornets in the nest, or some other analogy that's being a troll or a disruptor, an agitator. There's always going to be agitators, but I feel as though my character's developed over the years, and I can handle that. And it's helpful to have a community that can support you with that, where those people are few and far between. Yes, so the Q&A, Alex, would be once a week. I don't know what day. I have to think about what day and time would have the best impact. I suppose evening, my time would correlate with the time that's universally appropriate, and so I need to think about that. But please comment if you have any suggestions. I'm working on a big review paper at the moment, which I should be able to talk about soon. And then that's one thing I'd like to cover, because it's quite a big paper. But I'm really excited about it because it forms one aspect of the PhD that I'm doing. And I'm doing a PhD in a very untraditional sense. It has to be that way because I don't get the kind of support from colleagues and those who have the gatekeepers. You always have gatekeepers in this field, and you're always you're kind of beholden to them for everything. And because I'm doing things a different way, it allows me to have a lot more control over everything I'm doing. But that comes with consequences. I don't want to say consequences, it comes with drawbacks, let's say, in that you don't receive the same kind of support that you would do otherwise. However, again, the benefits outweigh any detriments from following the traditional path. That's probably a good metaphor for life, actually. Just that if you follow the traditional path, you get the traditional results, which you don't want to be average, because average is just towing the line. It's being part of the status quo, and the status quo is not serving us. It's not providing us with the outcomes that we need to see. We need to do things differently. So, as I say, any suggestions are welcome. Maybe I'll try and be more entertaining, because I don't know. Do people like? I suppose if the information is of high value, where do you place that balance? How entertaining and how much of a character do you expect your, let's call them a protagonist, your influencer, your commentator, your YouTuber, whatever you call them? Where does that balance reach equilibrium? What in what ratio, in what do you need to have a charismatic communicator, or if the information is valuable, does it matter? Because I'm not a character, I'm not larger than life, I'm not a motivator, I'm not a motivational speaker. I've had people at times ask me if I can give motivational talks, and I had to say, look, I'm not that guy. Funnily enough, before my brain tumor diagnosis, this is going back a long way now because it feels like a lifetime ago. I worked as a personal trainer, and I used to do exercise classes, used to instruct exercise classes. And I did that because it was completely out of my comfort zone. And I really pushed myself. I wanted to, I did want to be myself, but bring myself out more, be more confident. And it actually worked to a degree. But afterwards, I felt so exhausted because naturally I'm introverted and I get energy from doing introverted things. But I have some degree of extroversion where I do put myself out there as much as I can, and sometimes I do get energy from that. But it's it's a difficult balance. I know that people aren't all one way or the other in terms of that introversion, extroversion spectrum. But I do feel like I'm more in the introverted camp. But as I age, I'm becoming more content and comfortable with that, and of being myself and knowing who I am. I will be hitting a major landmark in just 3 months' time, when it'll be my birthday. It'll be a big birthday. And I've realized just how much I've grown in that time, and I'm actually looking forward to aging. Because the way that I'm aging is I'm improving as I age. I'm not declining, and that's a good sign in itself. I noticed that with my health and fitness, and with my personal growth. But I do need others to give me a helping hand, and to allow me to because it's not just me, it's we as a group. Nothing is ever achieved nothing's ever really achieved on your own. No one is truly self-made. Like, you have all these self-made millionaires, and you have athletes who are really successful. They are not successful because of just hard work and determination. Those things are extremely important, and dedication. I'm extremely dedicated, but you can't do anything without other people. I wouldn't have been able to do anything without the people around me in this. I don't like to say that there are certain communities, but I do feel like these kind of metabolic health communities have been extremely supportive of each other, and that's a beautiful thing. I think because many of us have known difficulty and suffering and sacrifice, because it's against the mainstream narratives. There's a degree of self-sacrifice within that. And I often find that if you're taking risks and if you sacrifice things, that's when you can grow. But a plant doesn't grow without you feeding it, and I need people to feed me. Let's say I'm a carnivorous plant, and I need that kind of sustenance. So I need to be fed to grow and to continue to thrive and to have an impact on the greater ecosystem. Using a lot of analogies here, but it seems relevant. And I'm kind of using this live as an experiment, just to see how many people view, how many people interact, because I would like to establish a platform by which there can be some interaction and discussion, both among people in the chat and directly. So there's contribution bidirectionally. And if I have a guest or a collaborator, it can be a tridirectional interaction, kind of like a triangle of 3 people. And so I need to think about how I gain momentum to achieve that goal. And I want to play around with knowing how to bring people into chats and doing lives where people can donate to our research. I don't know how to do any of this. but at the same time, I don't want to have to spend absolutely ages learning to do these things. But I do realize that there is some time necessary to dedicate to getting a greater understanding of these tools, how to most appropriately use them. And yeah, so if I do have a Q&A, I don't know if I need to think about just a general free-for-all or have a specific topic. It will be mainly talking about cancer and metabolic disease, but that's my audience really, so that shouldn't be too onerous. What else? What would people like to see? What are people interested in? I don't want to do some kind of clickbaity thing, but people seem to like that. So maybe I can do that a little bit. I'm mostly a writer, so speaking, it's not alien to me, but it's not within my comfort zone so much. But I do want to go out of my comfort zone as much as possible, because that's only a good thing. Oh, by the way, I'm working on getting rid of microplastics as much as possible from my life at the moment. And I realize you can't do that completely in the world that we live in, but I got this this gym gear from Biome Gym Gear. They're not sponsoring me or anything. I just think they're really great. And I realized that all the gym stuff I had that I was wearing was had microplastics in, and when I was sweating, that would make it worse. So that exposure, and so I'm a lot more mindful of that now, and just things like plastic bottles, getting rid of that. There was a paper that came out very recently. It was just last week, I think, actually, outlining the broadness of the physiological impact and mechanisms by which these microplastics are accumulating in certain organs and in the brain. It's quite disturbing. And its impact directly on the as contributing factors to different cancers and the mechanisms underlying those consequences, this carcinogenesis. So that was quite an illuminating paper, quite interesting to read. The predominant concern that was highlighted was relating to colorectal cancer and central nervous system cancers and the brain. So those were very specifically highlighted in dedicated sections. So it's as if the authors were saying or were suggesting, look here, this is where the alarm sounds. This is where the concern lies, the most concern, the predominant focus of your attention. That's where it should be. And yeah, it's pretty concerning how we're exposed to them in water, in food, if you go to a supermarket, and even if you're just eating meat and fish and eggs is okay, but meat and fish, you've got usually it's wrapped in plastic. If you have tinned fish, you've got not just the metals, but they can be lined in a plastic. Everyone's drinking from plastic water bottles. As I say, you've got all the clothing. I'm even having to change my underwear because that was an exposure. And I don't know what effect that could have on the on hormones, given their proximity to certain organs, reproductive organs. And so, yeah, I'm very mindful of this. I want to try and optimize my natural, normal hormone profile as much as possible. And I do feel that there's been a shift since I've gained weight over the past 8 weeks. I've gained healthy weight because after I completed my first marathon in April, I felt as though my testosterone levels were decreasing. I didn't have a test, but I just felt like it. In terms of my mood and my sleep and just general how I was feeling. And then since I've been gaining the weight, so I've gained 5 kilos. I gained 5 kilos in 7 weeks, and now it's the 8th week of a very regimented strength training and muscle gaining program, which includes deliberately gaining some body fat, because adipose tissue is an incredibly important endocrine organ. And we all have our set points. And so if you go too far below your set point and too far above, that can disrupt your hormones unfavorably. And so I feel as though I've shifted more into my preferential range, which is maybe aesthetically, if I cared about that, slightly beyond what I would prefer, but it's not important to me. I'm interested in performance goals, cognitive function, how I feel, and that hormonal profile. And also things like optimal vitamin D synthesis. So there's this interplay with cholesterol, and so you need cholesterol for hormone production, testosterone, and for synthesizing vitamin D. And so I'm probably around 16% body fat. I don't know. But I was closer to 10% before. But I felt like that was way too low for me. And I wasn't. It was great for my running. I was just able to do long distance running with incredible efficiency, particularly as I was in therapeutic ketosis while I was doing my fasted runs. Doing half marathons, 10-mile runs, eventually going to the marathon training, and then that distance of 26.2 miles. You just feel like you're flying through, if you launch a paper plane through the sky and you get it just right, it just sails through. And that's how I felt when I was running. Now it's interesting that I've gained the weight because I still do some running, just not at that distance, and I'm still in ketosis when I run. I still run fasted, but I have more power and strength going up hills. I'm just not able to sustain that pace for longer than 10 miles, which I'm okay with because I don't think it's particularly healthy to run that long anyway, even considering the fact that I can do it fairly quickly compared to the average person. I'm above average ability with my running. But then that sounds impressive, but then beyond that, there's hundreds and thousands of people who are more elite for me. I'm just below the elite level and above the average, somewhere in that wide range. But yeah, I'm the second fastest runner in my running club, but not the fastest. And my goals now with the running is just to win a 5K race, or at least come top. I'll be happy with top 5. I've managed to get top 10 finishes in amongst hundreds of runners, which I was really pleased with. Top 10 is amazing. But sometimes you want to see where your potential lies. And I've played around with different exogenous ketones to try and push that. And yeah, you see what the ceiling is when you're doing an activity that is clearly benefited by being in a state of ketosis, in that you're producing ATP more efficiently and utilizing oxygen more efficiently. And so, yeah, it's definitely an experience that I feel as though I've almost maximized in terms of my potential. But I'm hesitant to really say that, because I do feel like I could go further, but I don't feel like it's a particularly healthy thing to do, despite the fact that these types of endurance activities, when you're in a state of ketosis, particularly this deep ketosis that I was in, particularly especially towards the tail end of those runs, it's you do have some protection against the more potentially damaging effects of that, but it's not something that I want to see how far I can push it, because I don't like being so lightweight, and I just feel as though I need to focus on strength and gaining more lean tissue. My aim is to peak by the end of the year in terms of I know that there's various kind of levelings off that are naturally, I would naturally get to, some inevitable plateaus within that. But I would like to try and get as high within that level of improvement, if we can see it like not such a kind of like a hilly incline. Like to try and get maybe just over halfway up that incline by the end of the year, and be in great shape by then. I'm already ahead of my goals, my short-term goals, so wasn't expecting that, but I am expecting a plateau very soon. Water, yes, water would be a great topic in many different. There are many ways you can approach that topic. Many ways. Because I did have some experiments in the past with deuterium depleted water, and they were underwhelming. But then there's so many aspects of the whole deuterium field, the whole area of study, in that, say if you have say if there's a large degree of humidity where you are, you have deuterium in the air, and then if you're asleep in a humid environment, it's beneficial to, firstly, you should always have, I like having windows open as much as possible in the home for various reasons. And secondly, you would benefit from, in that kind of environment, you would benefit from having a dehumidifier in the room, even if it's not that humid, because you're filtering out the deuterium in the air, because we have all of this water vapor in the air. And so, yeah, it's I won't be visiting Singapore anytime soon, because I don't know. It's all theoretical, isn't it? We don't really know what levels of deuterium are optimal for health, because we can't bring it down to zero, can we? And deuterium is associated with growth and development. I've always had this this dilemma in my mind from just following my diagnosis with exercise, that at what point how do you think about what form of exercise is most appropriate for the cancer patient? And I'd always leaned on the idea that long walks are by far the best thing you can do, because you're actually it's one of the forms of exercise, if you want to call it an exercise activity, where you're actually lowering cortisol rather than having it increase. I do understand that we see it as a stress hormone, but it's so much more than that. We want cortisol to be excreted at the right times, so in line with circadian biology, natural circadian biology, how it should be. It's useful for infection control, the inflammation that we do want, for waking up in the morning, for being alert, but we want it excreted at the right times. However, when you do wake up in the morning, one thing that I made sure to apply very early on is to have my morning walk as the sun is in the air, which you can't really do in the winter. And so I just went out in the dark, and just as soon as I woke up, just went out anyway. You can have these wake up lights, but I don't have one of those, so I just have the red lights for the evening. In the summer, you don't have to think about that at all because we've got the sun and it comes out very early. I tend to wake up with the sun in the summer. Wake up very early, 5 a.m. usually. At the moment, it's just before 5 a.m. that I'm waking up, but I feel rested, I feel good. I feel sharp, I feel aware. But yeah, so I've kind of gone off on tangents and I'm rambling a bit, but I feel as though people might find this information useful. You have something called dawn phenomenon, where if you're attempting to maintain therapeutic ketosis as much as possible to manage cancer, it's beneficial to have that morning walk because your blood sugar will naturally rise as the cortisol rises. And so if you go for a walk, you can lower that cortisol. As you've already woken up, you don't need any more. You can lower it. You can reset your circadian rhythms to a new day. You can get all the benefits from the sun. Even better if you're grounded. You can have grounding shoes if you don't want to go completely barefoot. Make sure that you are on ground that's not sprayed heavily with fertilizers and pesticides and all of this stuff, insecticides, which unfortunately, if you're in London where we were at the conference, they have permitted insecticides and pesticides that they spray along certain regions within the royal parks. So Regent's Park, Hyde Park, others I can't think about, the main big parks. Unfortunately, if you're grounding there, you have to be very careful because I do know that those are routinely sprayed. And so you might be doing more harm than good if you're grounding in those parks. And so I tend to do that more in my garden at home. Even though I don't have much of a garden, I've just got a nice patch of land. And I feel as though it's sufficient. But yeah, grounding shoes if you can get them. And any shoes that have a leather sole is good for grounding. What else? I feel as though I'm ignoring something important. Probably remember as soon as I finish this, and then it'd be like, I wish I'd mentioned this one thing. But yeah, I just wanted to. I'm just reading comments now. One way you can supposedly get rid of microplastics is through sauna. I really like sauna. I do cold exposure as well, but I have to be super careful with that because you need if you have any kind of potential of triggering seizure activity, if you're prone to these events, then you have to very gradually introduce any kind of cold exposure. I don't just mean over a longer period of time, but as you're actually having that immersion, that contact with the water, if it's through water. So if I am doing it having a shower, I have to very gradually make it cold. I can't just have this short, sharp shock. because I could trigger a seizure. That shock reaction, that fight or flight, that response, that would just be too hyper excitable. It's not good. But if I do it gradually, I can actually increase my threshold through that resilience. You become more resilient. Your central nervous system becomes more adapted to it. And so you have to be careful with that. Yeah, you even have to be careful with the heat treatments, but it's not as much of an issue as with the cold. One thing I like about the increased weight as well is that I don't know, maybe I have more brown adipose tissue than the white adipose tissue, but I feel like I can tolerate more cold when I'm this weight as opposed to when I've been lighter. And I've always been lighter in the winter, which hasn't been good. So this time I'm going to be heavier in the winter, and that'll be nice. I think that's how we're naturally supposed to be anyway. Or I don't know. Are we? Maybe the opposite. Because if I think about it through evolutionary biology or just anthropology, whatever. If I think about it through that lens, over the winter, not much is growing, and we would use fruits and nuts and these things to gain weight. So maybe we would be, or I guess we'd be more maybe muscular in the winter and fatter in the summer. I don't know. Answers on a postcard. I don't have the answer to these things. Yeah, I looked heavily into anthropology and the work of Weston A. Price when I was first applying a ketogenic diet, because I felt as though there were parallels with Darwinian biology in cancer. And so if we follow how we evolved, we can find healing through the ways we're supposed to live, and how and that there was wisdom in these tribes that would consume organ meats and even things like insects and all these other foods that they would have access to, and ways of preparing the food. I'm just trying to think about what else I need to mention. Because there was something on my mind and it slipped my mind. Very important. Yeah, sleep as well. Just I've been focusing on optimizing sleep, and I feel as though that's helped me to gain good weight as well. And my weights have been going up in the gym. I feel as though sleep has had the biggest impact on that, actually. And that good sleep helps to optimize healthy blood sugar control and insulin. Because it's an oversimplification to say that cancer feeds on sugar. It's true, but it's more because sugar is so insulinogenic, And so when we have that hyperinsulinemia, that's when we have this surge in these growth factors like IGF-1 and all the associated or everything that goes downstream from that, all the associated growth factors that are associated with that and go downstream and have all these other effects. You can get this from a large bolus of protein. However, if that comes with the fat, if it's in ketogenic ratios, it's not really a concern. On this diet, you're not really supposed to be eating large amounts of lean protein. And so the fat is very important. It's kind of the opposite that people who are promoting this more omnivorous diet, where they think it's the fiber that you would need to have to temper that rise in the blood sugar. In this aspect, it's more that you need the fat to have those those responses that you would want to have, even in terms of satiety hormones, leptin and ghrelin, hunger and satiety. It's more if you find those ratios that work best for you and the foods that work best for you, because different foods will garner different responses, even gram for gram. 100 grams of fish is different to 100 grams of beef. Even 100 grams of beef, even if it's the same protein to fat ratio, will be different. You'll have a different, or you could have a different response to lamb. The same. I do best with lamb compared to beef. I don't know why. It just happens. Gram for gram. It's also, dairy is also an interesting one. I have to limit dairy a lot. I can have it in the form of butter. I do best with goat butter. I seem to not have any issues with it at all. Goat and sheep. I can occasionally have goat and sheep yogurt. Has to be the very high fat one though. You can't really get these in shops. You have to go to either specialty shops or online, or make your own. There are some cow sourced cheeses that I can have, but most of them I don't do well with. And there is the question of, should we really be eating dairy in the first place? But it's a contentious topic, and there could be a lot of, that's a debate that could roll on forever, because there are some beneficial compounds within certain types of dairy. But then there are some potential problems with it. But it's complicated. I do know that in the yogurts I have, they naturally have MCTs. And I know that compared to, say, if I had traditional yogurts, it allows me to ramp up my blood ketones. which traditionally you'd think that yogurts might be too carby for that, but these have an opposing effect on me compared to that example, which is very interesting. Definitely very interesting. So rather than having some MCT oil that someone's produced, you can get the benefit from something that's more that has some nutrient density and is naturally in a natural form. Okay, it's a yogurt. That's a yogurt, and yogurt's a kind of a processed food, but it's a different kind of thing. Yeah, one thing that I've explored over the years is exogenous ketones. I think there's a time and a place for them. I don't think that they should be used unless you're keto adapted. I know some people argue that they can help to become keto adapted. They can be like a bridge. I'm not so sold on that idea. I do think that if it's not like an urgent thing, you should just gradually get your body adapted to being keto adapted. And then as kind of like a supplementary measure, because it is like a supplement, then you can begin to use exogenous ketones, and only when necessary. And they take the form that they can be used in so many different forms. I've used all of them, all the different forms, the salts, the esters, these monoesters, and the bioidentical forms that are the same as what you produce naturally from the liver. I would extend that to MCT oil, in that you should be keto adapted before you, if you're managing, I'll add the caveat, if you're managing cancer or any kind of metabolic disease, then you should be keto adapted. For the general public, doesn't matter. Do what you want, because exogenous ketones can be very useful for their appetite suppressing effects, for any kind of acute inflammation. They can also aid sleep, providing you have the correct form that allows you to do that. So I had a protocol a while ago where I was taking exogenous ketones 2 hours before sleep, and then the hour before sleep I'd have magnesium, and then there was this kind of not synergy but an additive benefit, whereby my sleep quality when I measured it was in the superior range, and then when I didn't do that, it slips back down. So for a while that was useful. In the winter that was useful, because I had problems in the winter with that, and then it corrected itself, and then I didn't need to do it anymore. So it did act as kind of like a bridge for me to get to that other side. Yeah, it can be a useful biohack, but you need to know what you're doing. It's also very useful when you are keto adapted and you're doing an endurance event, and you take exogenous ketones to give you a bit extra when you're reaching the point where you because you can still exhaust a fuel source, even though it's so much more efficient using ketones. It's just that it would happen much further down the line than if you're running and then you're constantly ingesting these carb gels. If you're a carb-fueled athlete, you have to keep fueling yourself, and you don't need to do that if you're in a ketotic state. But if you're doing like an ultra marathon or an ultra endurance event, then, or even just like that's why they're so popular with professional cyclists, because they're absolute nutters, and it gives them that extra boost. They're just using so much energy. Even when they're consuming loads of carbs, these professional cyclists can still be in a state of ketosis, just because they're so... It's interesting, because even though they're always having these carbs, they're using up so much energy that they are still able to... They're still kind of... they're not really... They're using fat very efficiently for fuel, and they're able to produce ketones, but then they're having this top up as well. It's really interesting. Probably haven't explained that completely, probably because it's not something that I'm focused on, specifically the athletic performance, even though it's an interest of mine. But it's something that I've played around with my running. I don't think there's much benefit for strength training. But I used to use it to improve my seizure threshold when I was exercising years ago. But it wasn't always beneficial. I had to pick and choose my moments. Yeah, because the muscles are like the kind of term often used is a glucose sink. So the muscles using up that glucose. And that's why I want to increase my amount of lean tissue as well, because then with the increase in food that I'm consuming, I want that to create new lean tissue, and I want the lean tissue to be taking up the extra, because well, even though I'm still eating ketogenic ratios, it's more the ratios have changed somewhat, and so there will inevitably be, and there has been slightly higher blood glucose, postprandial blood glucose. So I want the muscles to take that up, and I make efforts to be active either while I'm eating or immediately afterwards, because then you're blunting that response, that insulinogenic response. It's always good to do some light exercise, light activity immediately following a meal. you become more insulin sensitive, and it's a good thing. So every time I eat, I go for a short walk afterwards. I think we've covered everything and more, but thank you for watching. If you watch this video after I've been live, please leave a comment on what you would like to see from this channel in future, and provide any suggestions on what you would like to see. Thank you for watching.